The 75th Ranger Regiment, also known as Rangers, is an elite light infantry, special operations force of the United States Army. The regiment is headquartered at Fort Benning, Georgia, and is composed of 1 Special Troops Battalion and 3 Ranger Battalions. The regiment is the U.S. Army's premier raid force, with specialized skills that enable them to perform a variety of missions. These include direct action, airfield seizure, airborne and air assaults, special reconnaissance, personnel recovery, and high-value target raids. It operates as a special operations force under the United States Army Special Operations Command. Origin. The regiment's history dates back to colonial America, when rifle companies from Major Robert Rogers made long-range attacks against French forces and their Indian allies and were instrumental in capturing Fort Detroit. During the American Revolutionary War, many colonial commanders were former Rangers. 1. General John Stark commanded the 1st New Hampshire Militia, which gained fame at the battles of Bunker Hill and Bennington. Stark later coined the phrase "live free or die." New Hampshire's state motto. American Ranger history predates the Revolutionary War to Ethan Allen and his guerrilla fighting group the Green Mountain Boys in Vermont. Captain Benjamin Church formed Church's Rangers, which fought hostile Native American tribes during King Philip's War. In 1756, Major Rogers, a New Hampshire native, recruited 9 Ranger companies to fight in the French and Indian War. They were known as Rogers Rangers. Quote, in 1775 the Continental Congress later formed 8 companies of expert riflemen to fight in the Revolutionary War. In 1777, this force of hardy frontiersmen, commanded by Dan Morgan, was known as the Corps of Rangers. Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, organized another famous Revolutionary War Ranger element known as Marion's Partisans. During the War of 1812, companies of United States Rangers were raised from among the frontier settlers as part of the regular army. Throughout the war, they patrolled the frontier from Ohio to western Illinois on horseback and by boat. Rangers participated in many skirmishes and battles with the British and their American Indian allies. The American Civil War included Rangers such as John Singleton Mosby, who was the most famous Confederate Ranger during the Civil War. His company's raids on Union camps and bases were so effective, part of north-central Virginia soon became known as Mosby's Confederacy. After the Civil War, more than half a century passed without Ranger units in the United States. World War II battalions. 1st Ranger Battalion. On 8 December 1941, the United States entered World War II the day after Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan. At the time, Major William Orlando Darby, the founder of the modern Rangers, was assigned to be on duty in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Darby, frustrated with his lack of hands-on experience as General Russell P. Hartle's aide, was put in charge of a new unit. General George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff of the United States Army, envisioned an elite unit of 50 men selected voluntarily from the 34th Infantry Division. He believed Darby was the man to do the job. On 8 June 1942, Darby was officially put in charge of the 1st Ranger Battalion under General Hartle. On 19 August 1942, 50 Rangers fought alongside Canadian and British commandos in the ill-fated Jep raid on the coast of occupied France. 3 Rangers were killed and several captured. The first American soldier killed in Europe in World War II was part of this raid. Ranger Lieutenant E.V. Laustalot. During the mission, he took command after the British captain leading the assault was killed. Laustalot scaled a steep cliff with his men, was wounded 3 times, but was eventually cut down by enemy crossfire in his attempts to reach the machine gun nest at the top of the cliff. In November 1942, the entire 1st Ranger Battalion entered combat for the first time when they landed at Tarsu, Algeria. The first were split into 2 groups in hopes of assaulting Vichy French batteries and fortifications before the 1st Infantry Division would land on the beach. The operation was successful. The unit sustained minimal casualties. On the 11th of February 1943, the Rangers moved 32 miles to raid an Italian encampment at Sens Station. Moving at night, the Rangers slipped to within 50 yards of the Italian outpost and began their attack. It took the battalion only 20 minutes to overtake the garrison and achieve their objective. 50 Italians were killed and another 10 were taken prisoner. Derby, along with other officers, was awarded the Silver Star Medal for this action. The battalion itself gained the nickname the Black Death by the Italians. At the time, the Italians still held the pass at Jebel al-Ankh, located at the far east edge of El Gheta. The Rangers linked up with engineers elements of the 26th Infantry, 1st Infantry Division, to attack the area. The 1st Rangers' orders were to move overland on for 12 miles to outflank the enemy's position. In 8 hours of fighting, the Americans captured the objective. The 1st Rangers took 200 prisoners. Creation of 3rd and 4th Ranger Battalions. With the success of the 1st Ranger Battalion during the Tunisian campaign, Derby requested that the Rangers be expanded to a full regiment. The request was granted. The 3rd and 4th Ranger Battalions were authorized shortly after and were trained and led by veteran officers and NCOs from the 1st Battalion. After getting the green light to expand, Derby ran into a problem. The Rangers only took volunteers. Derby, knowing that the best man for the job was not always a volunteer, sought out men around Oran. Although he was still limited in that he could only accept volunteers, he began to find ways around this. For instance, he began to give speeches, put up posters and encouraged his officers to scout around for eligible candidates. By June 1943, the 3 Ranger battalions were fully operational. 1st Rangers were still under Colonel Derby, the 3rd under Major Herman Dammer, the 4th commanded by Major Roy Murray. 1st and 4th Ranger battalions were paired together and positioned to spearhead General Terry Allen's 1st Division on the Sicily campaign. Landing outside Gela, the Rangers took the town just after midnight and were quickly sent out to San Nicola. The Rangers seized the town with the help of an armored division. Despite the fact that they were under a constant attack from enemy artillery, tank, and air forces, they still succeeded in the completion of the mission. This 50-hour barrage would be one of the most unbearable experiences for the Rangers. Following the success, the 2 Ranger battalions were then ordered to take the town of Butera, a fortress suspended on the 4,000-foot-high edge of the cliff at Butera Beach. After almost withdrawing from the battle and requesting artillery to level the city, a platoon of Rangers volunteered to breach the city. 2 privates, John C. and John Constantine, sneaked in behind enemy lines and tricked the Italians and Germans into surrendering the city. Meanwhile, the 3rd Ranger Battalion headed out into the area of Agrigento, where they marched through Campobello, Naro, and Favara, successfully occupying each town. The 3rd was ordered to backtrack to the shores of Porto Empedocle. The beach itself was not occupied, but high in the cliffs heavy machine gun and cannon fire poured onto the Rangers. Scrambling, the Rangers made the way to each machine gun nest and disabled all enemy opposition before the supporting infantry battalion even hit the shore. Colonel Darby was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and was promoted by General George Patton. Darby, wanting to be closer to his men, turned down this promotion. Fall of 1st, 3rd and 4th Battalions on the 30th of January 1944. After Christmas break, the Rangers were put together for a joint operation to occupy the town of Cisterna before the main infantry division moved in. That night the 1st and 3rd Battalions moved into the town, passing many German soldiers that did not appear to notice the Rangers slip by. The 4th Ranger Battalion met opposition almost immediately, taking an opposite route by the road. During the night the 1st and 3rd Ranger Battalions separated out about 2 miles, and when daylight caught the 1st Ranger Battalion out in an open field, the Germans began their ambush. Completely surrounded and unable to escape, the 2 Ranger Battalions fought on until ammunition and resources were exhausted. The 4th Ranger Battalion tried to make a push to save their comrades but were unsuccessful and had to withdraw. After 5 hours of fighting, German tanks and motorized infantry defeated the Rangers. Out of the 760 men in the 2 battalions, only 6 escaped and the rest were killed or captured. This marked the end of the 3 Ranger Battalions. The remaining 400 Rangers were scattered around the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and the 137 original Rangers were sent home. On the 26th of October 1944, the 3 original Ranger Battalions were deactivated at Camp Butner, North Carolina. 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions. The 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions were trained at Camp Forest, Tennessee on the 1st of April 1943. They first saw action the 6th of June 1944, during Operation Overlord. During D-Day, 2nd Rangers Companies D, E, and F were ordered to take a strategic German outpost at Point du Hoc. This coastal cliff was supposed to have several 155 mm artillery cannons aimed down at the beach. Once they arrived at the bottom of the cliff, they had an enormous climb to make up rope ladders while receiving a barrage of machine gun fire from the Germans above. The 2nd Rangers were successful in taking the area even with the intense German resistance, but the guns were not in sight. A patrol scouting the area found the 155 mm coastal guns a mile away. The patrol party quickly disabled the guns and any resistance in the area. In the article, Rangers Take Point, Leonard Lommel and Jack Cunha interviewed on the events that took place that day. Lommel explains the guns had to have been taken off the point. We were looking for any kind of evidence we could find, and it looked like there were some markings on the secondary road where it joined the main road. We decided to leapfrog. Jack covered me, and I went forward. When I got a few feet forward, I covered him. It was a sunken road with very high hedgerows with trees and bushes and stuff like that. It was wide enough to put a column of tanks in, and they would be well hidden. We didn't see anybody, so we just took a chance, running as fast as we could, looking over the hedgerow. At least we had the protection of the high hedgerows. When it became my turn to look over, I said, "God, here they are." Quote, they were in an orchard camouflaged in among the trees. Meanwhile, the rest of the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalion spearheaded the 216th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, on the beach at Omaha. This is where the famous Ranger slogan comes from. When Major Max F. Schneider, commanding the 5th Ranger Battalion, met with General Norman Cotter. When Schneider was asked his unit by Cotter, someone yelled out, "5th Rangers." To which Kota replied, "Well then, goddammit, Rangers, lead the way." Quote, "This drive cut the German line, allowing the conventional army to move in. The 2nd and 5th Ranger battalions worked on special operation tasks in the Normandy campaign. The two battalions fought in many battles such as Battle for Brest and the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest. The 2nd Rangers were responsible for capturing Le Conquet Peninsula, where they disabled a 280mm gun and took many German prisoners. The 2nd Ranger Battalion also went on to take several tactical German positions, cutting the German line in the Rhineland. In Saar west of Zerf, the 5th Battalion took an overlooking German position, cutting of all supply routes to German forces. 6th Ranger Battalion. The 6th Ranger Battalion was stationed in the Pacific, and served mostly in the Philippines and New Guinea. All operations completed by the 6th Battalion were done in company or platoon size behind enemy lines. They were the first soldiers to hit the Philippines, 3 days before the Army would launch the first invasion. The 6th Ranger Battalion conducted long-range reconnaissance, operating miles past the front line, at Cabanatuan, on the island of Luzon in January 1945. A company of the 6th Ranger Battalion executed the raid at Cabanatuan. The Rangers penetrated 29 miles behind enemy lines, including crawling a mile across an open field on their stomachs. During the final assault, the Rangers destroyed a garrison of Japanese soldiers twice the size and rescued 500 POWs. The 6th Ranger Battalion's final mission was to secure a drop zone for paratroopers 250 miles into enemy territory. They linked up with the 32nd Infantry Division and ended the war in the Philippines. Merrill's Marauders in August 1944, after 5 months of fighting in China-Burma-India theater with the Japanese Army. Merrill's Marauders were consolidated into then 475th Infantry, afterwards 75th Infantry, as a special force group led by Brigadier General Frank Merrill, to commemorate its companion Chinese Expeditionary Force. Merrill's Marauders put the national emblem of the Republic of China on its badge. The sun also represents daylight operations, the lightning bolt signifies the swiftness of the strikes, and the white star signifies night capabilities. Korean War. The outbreak of hostilities in Korea in June 1950 again signaled the need for Rangers. 15 Ranger companies were formed during the Korean War. The Rangers went to battle throughout the winter of 1950 and the spring of 1951. They were nomadic warriors, attached first to one regiment and then to another. They performed out-front work, scouting, patrolling, raids, ambushes, spearheading assaults, and as counter-attack forces to regain lost positions. In all 6 airborne Ranger companies, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 8th, averaging 125 soldiers in each company, served during the conflict. 2 other companies, the 10th and 11th, were scheduled for Korea but were deactivated in Japan. During the course of the Korean War, 100 Rangers were killed in action and 296 were wounded in action. Vietnam War. The history of Long-Range Reconnaissance Patrol (LRP) and Ranger units deployed during the Cold War in Europe and Vietnam is based on 3 time periods. 1. LRP from late 1965 to the 20th of December 1967. 2. LRP from late December 1967 through January 1969. And 3. Ranger from the 1st of February 1969 to 1972, when the Vietnam War drew down and the U. Vietnam Ranger units were deactivated. However, in 1974 the colors and lineage were passed to newly formed Ranger battalions based in the United States. The first period above began in Vietnam in November 1966 with the creation of a provisional LRRP detachment by the 1st Cavalry Division, followed by the 1st Brigade, 101st Airborne Division, the 1st Infantry Division, and the 25th Infantry Division in June 1966. General William C. Westmoreland, commander of Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, ordered the creation of provisional LRRPs in all infantry brigades and divisions on 8 July 1966. By the winter of 1966 the 4th and 9th Infantry Divisions had operational LRRP units, and in January 1967 the 196th Light Infantry Brigade had the same. The 101st Airborne Division main body, while still at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, converted its Divisional Recondo School into a provisional LRRP unit in the summer of 1967, before the division deployed to Vietnam. This provisional company arrived in Vietnam in late November 1967. The second period began in late June 1967, when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Earl G. Wheeler, authorized the formation of 2 long-range patrol companies for Iron II Field Forces. Company E, 20th Infantry, was activated on 25 September 1967 and assigned to I Field Force and stationed at Phan Rang. The nucleus of this unit came from the 1st Brigade, 101st Airborne Division LRRP Platoon, along with soldiers from the replacement stream. Company F, 51st Infantry, was activated on 25 September 1967 and assigned to 2 Field Force stationed at Bien Hoa. Its nucleus came from the LRRP Platoon of the 173d Airborne Brigade, along with soldiers from the replacement stream. Each of the 2 Field Force LRP companies had a strength of 230 men, and was commanded by a major, in an apparent response to division commanders' tactical requirements, and bolstered by the combat effectiveness of the provisional LRRP units. In the winter of 1967 the Army authorized separate company designations for long-range patrol units in divisions and detachments in separate brigades. The divisional LRP companies were authorized 118 men and the brigade detachments 61 men. The wholesale renaming of existing divisional LRP units occurred on 20 December 1967 in the 1st Cavalry, 1st Infantry, 4th Infantry, 9th Infantry, 23d, and 25th Infantry Divisions. LRP detachments were created in the 199th Light Infantry Brigade on 10 January 1968, in the 173d Airborne Brigade on 5 February 1968, and in the 3d Brigade 82d Airborne Division and 1st Brigade 5th Mechanized Division on 15 December 1968. On 1 February 1969, the final period of the existence of these units began when the Department of the Army redesignated the LRP companies and detachments as lettered Ranger companies of the 75th Infantry Regiment under the Combined Arms Regimental System. The reflagged Ranger companies were A. 5th Corps Rangers, Fort Hood, Texas; B. 7th Corps Rangers, Fort Lewis, Washington; C. I Field Forces, Vietnam; D. 2 Field Forces, Vietnam; E. 9th Infantry Division, Vietnam; F. 25th Infantry Division, Vietnam; G. 23rd Infantry Division, Vietnam; H. 1st Cavalry Division, Vietnam. Vietnam. I. 1st Infantry Division, Vietnam. K. 4th Infantry Division, Vietnam. L. 101st Airborne Division, Vietnam. M. 199th Light Infantry Brigade, Vietnam. N. 173rd Airborne Brigade, Vietnam. O. 3rd Brigade, 82nd Airborne Division, Vietnam. P. 1st Brigade, 5th Infantry Division, Vietnam. D. 151 Indiana National Guard and F. 425 Michigan National Guard. The third period ended when the Ranger companies were inactivated as the parent units were withdrawn from the war between November 1969 and on the 15th of August 1972. On the 9th of June 1972, H Company lost Sergeant Elvis Weldon Osborne Jr. and Corporal Jeffrey Allen Maurer to enemy action. 3 other U.S. soldiers were killed by non-hostile action that day, but Sergeant Osborne and Corporal Maurer were the last U.S. Army infantrymen killed on the ground, as well as the last Rangers killed in the Vietnam War. Modern battalions. In January 1974, General Creighton Abrams, Army Chief of Staff, directed the formation of a Ranger Battalion. General Kenneth C. Louis was charged with activating, organizing, training and leading the first battalion-sized Ranger unit since World War II. The 1st Ranger Battalion was activated and parachuted into Fort Stewart, Georgia on the 1st of July 1974. The 2nd Ranger Battalion followed with activation on the 1st of October 1974. The 3rd Ranger Battalion and Headquarters Company received the colors on the 3rd of October 1984 at Fort Benning, GAR. The 75th Ranger Regiment was designated in February 1986. The modern Ranger battalions were first called upon in 1980. Elements of 1st Ranger Battalion participated in the Iranian hostage rescue attempts. In October 1983, 1st and 2nd Ranger Battalion spearheaded Operation Urgent Fury, conducting a dangerous low-level parachute assault to seize Point Salines Airfield and rescue American citizens at True Blue Medical Campus. The entire 75th Ranger Regiment participated in Operation Just Cause. Rangers spearheaded the action by conducting 2 important operations. Simultaneous parachute assaults were conducted onto Dorajos Tocumen International Airport, Rio Hato Airfield and General Manuel Noriega's beach house, to neutralize Panamanian defense forces. The Rangers captured 1,014 enemy prisoners of war and over 18,000 various weapons. Elements of Company B and 1st Platoon Company A, 1st Ranger Battalion, deployed to Saudi Arabia from the 12th of February 1991 to the 15th of April 1991, in support of Operation Desert Storm. They conducted raids and provided a quick reaction force in cooperation with Allied forces. In December 1991, 175th and the regimental headquarters deployed to Kuwait in a show of force known as Operation Iris Gold. The Rangers performed an airborne assault onto Ali Al Salem Airfield near Kuwait City, conducted a 50 km foot march through devastation left from the ground campaign, conducted a live fire exercises and exfiltrated by foot. In August 1993, elements of 3rd Ranger Battalion deployed to Somalia to assist United Nations forces attempting to bring order to the chaotic and starving nation. On the 3rd of October 1993, the Rangers conducted a daylight raid with Delta Force. For nearly 18 hours, the Rangers delivered devastating firepower, killing an estimated 600 Somalis. On the 24th of November 2000, the 75th Ranger Regiment deployed Regimental Reconnaissance Company Team 2 and a command and control element to Kosovo in support of Task Force Falcon. After the events of the 11th of September 2001, Rangers were again called into action in support of the War on Terror. On the 19th of October 2001, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment spearheaded ground forces by conducting an airborne assault to seize objective Rhino in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. On the 28th of March 2003, 3rd Ranger Battalion employed the 1st Airborne Assault in Iraq to seize objective Serpent in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Following the invasion, the main 75th Ranger deployment to Iraq was known as Task Force North, Red, who carried out operations in northern Iraq, supported by a small element of Delta Force operators. Other smaller Ranger elements were deployed to TF West Blue and TF Center Green to support JSOC operations. On June 18, 2003, as part of Task Force 20, Delta Force operators and U.S. Army Rangers flew from Mosul via helicopter to chase a vehicle convoy of Iraqis over the border into Syria. JSOC suspected that Saddam Hussein was part of the convoy. Ultimately, Hussein was not in the convoy, but several of his cousins were. On July 23, 2005, Rangers acted as a backup force for the British Special Boat Service during Operation Marlborough. The Regimental Special Troops Battalion was activated on the 17th of July 2006. The RSDB conducts sustainment, intelligence, reconnaissance and maintenance missions which were previously accomplished by small detachments assigned to the regimental headquarters and then attached within each of the 3 Ranger battalions. The activation of the RSDB is part of the shift of the Ranger Force's focus from short-term contingency missions towards continuous combat operations without loss in lethality or flexibility. As of 2012, the 75th Ranger Regiment is conducting sustained combat operations in multiple countries, deploying from multiple locations in the United States, an unprecedented task for the regiment. Rangers continue conducting combat operations with almost every deployed Special Operation Force, conventional and coalition force in support of both Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Ranger Regiment executes a wide range of diverse operations that include airborne and air assaults into Afghanistan and Iraq, mounted infiltrations behind enemy lines, complex urban raids on high-value targets, and rescue operations. Ranger Battalion operational tempo while deployed is high. The 1st Ranger Battalion conducted more than 900 missions in Afghanistan in one deployment. The battalion successfully captured nearly 1,700 enemy combatants and killed more than 400. While the Ranger Regiment has traditionally been considered an elite light infantry force, operations over the past decade have demonstrated the Rangers' capabilities of conducting a full range of special operations missions. In November 2015, the U.S. military sent a company of Rangers to southeastern Afghanistan as part of the war in Afghanistan, to help Afghan counter-terrorism forces destroy an Al-Qaeda training camp in a fierce fight that lasted for several days. Organization